Chapter 538. It's no use. Leah patted Elvis's shoulder and signaled him to retract his beast pressure. They are snakes that have been following Snake around all year round and are long used to the Beast King's coercion. Our normal coercion is completely useless in front of them. Elvis remained silent. Seeing how weak Gu Mengmeng was, his heart ached to the extreme. He could only ask in a low voice, "Then what do we do now?" "I'm afraid Xiaomeng can't hold on." Leah caressed Gu Mengmeng's little face gently. He then looked at Elvis and asked, "How's your stamina now?" Elvis looked at Leah from the corner of his eyes, waiting for him to continue. Leah said, "The poison has caused the blood in Xiaomeng's body to start coagulating. You have to let Mengmeng's blood flow so that the antidote Snake placed in her body can take effect." "But you were just beaten up by Snake, can you still hold on?" Elvis clenched his teeth and smiled bitterly. "Even if I can't just let Xiaomeng die like this." Leah pursed his lips and said, "If you really can't hold on, I can do it." Elvis stared at Leah for a moment and smiled. "I won't let Xiaomeng mate with you against her own will." Leah nodded. "Then I'll stand guard at the side. Hurry up and finish it before Snake returns, in case he goes crazy and hurts Gu Mengmeng." Elvis nodded and carried Gu Mengmeng to the deepest part of the cave. He removed his beast-skin dress and laid it under Gu Mengmeng's body. He then gently removed her dress and kissed her fragrant shoulder. He whispered into her ear, "Xiaomeng, do you know? I love to see you become emotional because of me. So, if you can do it, respond to me, alright? Compared to this quietness, I love it even more when you hug my neck and say you love me." Elvis's kiss traveled up Gu Mengmeng's collarbone and finally covered both of her lips. His nimble tongue forcefully pried open her tightly clenched teeth. Before he could conquer her territory, his mouth was filled with the taste of blood. Elvis groaned in pain but refused to retract his tongue. He sucked on Gu Mengmeng's lips and used his blood to nourish her body. It had only been 2 days, but Gu Mengmeng had obviously lost so much weight. Snake must not have taken good care of her, she probably had not eaten anything these few days. The blood of a level 5 beast was very nutritious. If he could help Xiaomeng regain some of her strength, even if his tongue was bitten off and he bled to death, so what? Elvis caressed Gu Mengmeng's arm with his big hands, trying his best to help her circulate blood. His big tail swept Gu Mengmeng's legs, trying his best to take care of every part of her body. But even so, Gu Mengmeng did not respond at all. She just laid there quietly like a porcelain doll that had lost her soul. She shut her eyes tightly, frowned and her teeth chattered. Elvis turned all his energy into love and gave it all to Gu Mengmeng. Then, he suddenly lost all his energy like a toy whose battery had been depleted. He laid on Gu Mengmeng's body and lost consciousness. Leah smiled bitterly as he dealt with the aftermath. He first carried Elvis to one side, then used a beast skin to wipe Gu Mengmeng's body clean. Then, he hugged her tightly in his arms, using his own body temperature to maintain Gu Mengmeng's body temperature that had risen after much difficulty. Even though the lingering aura on her body was torturing him physically and mentally, Leah only wished for her to be alive at this moment. Just living in peace would be enough. Aside from the topic, do I still need to explain what is in the ellipsis? Come, verify the group number, 4927792773. Chapter 539. When Snake dragged his prey, whose bones had been crushed inch by inch, back, he sharply sensed the dispirited aura in the cave. With his eyes straightened, he attacked Elvis at lightning speed. "If you kill him, Gu Meng won't be able to live." Leah spoke calmly, finishing the last word just as Snake's fangs were about to touch Elvis's artery. The blood vessels on Snake's face flowed rapidly and his lower body was in the shape of a snake. One could almost see the snake scales rising slightly. He wanted to kill Gu Mengmeng without a care in the world, but when his gaze landed on Gu Mengmeng's face, which was no longer ghastly pale, he recalled the words she said when she bit him in the day and the tearful look on her face. Snake forcefully stopped his attack and slammed his thick tail onto the ground, creating a pit. The plump prey was thrown at the entrance of the cave, and Snake swam out of the cave to vent his anger wantonly in the valley. An ancient tree was uprooted, and the tree trunks were crushed into sawdust by Snake's tail. But in the end, none of the destroyed trees were fruit trees. Leah placed Gu Meng Meng in Elvis's arms, and even though Elvis was unconscious, he still hugged Gu Meng Meng tightly. And Gu Meng Meng also tilted her head slightly, pressing her face against Elvis's chest, listening to his heartbeat. He was sleeping so peacefully. Leah dragged his weak body to deal with the prey. He looked at the little snakes guarding the cave entrance, and tried to take a step forward. The little snakes did not stop Leah from leaving, so it was obvious that Snake's instructions were only for Gu Meng Meng alone. That was good too. Leah carried the prey out of the cave, and instinctively found a water source to wash and deal with the prey Snake brought back. This fellow should have always swallowed them alive. This hunting method of crushing the bones and stabbing them into the flesh was too perverted. Leah could almost imagine how Snake had been thinking about how to vent his anger when he was hunting. Shaking his head helplessly, he carefully removed every piece of bone from the meat, and then cut the meat into pieces. By the time Leah settled everything and returned, Elvis had already woken up and was staring at Snake with widened eyes. Perhaps the radiation from the collision of their gazes was too strong, causing Gu Meng Meng to feel a sense of pressure. Frowning, she moaned and felt a gush of warmth licking her face. Gu Meng Meng squinted her eyes, and when she saw Elvis's face, the corners of her lips could not help but curve upwards. She lifted her arm that was as heavy as lead and hooked it around Elvis's neck. Using the force, she flipped her body towards Elvis and found a relatively comfortable position to nestle in Elvis's arms. She murmured, "Hubby, I had a weird dream just now." Elvis kissed her hair gently and asked, "What did you dream about?" Gu Meng Meng's throat was a little dry and she coughed softly. Leah passed over a cup of water at the right time and Elvis drank a small sip before passing it to Gu Meng Meng with his lips. After moistening her throat, Gu Meng Meng continued, "I dreamed that I could not move no matter what. I clearly heard you calling me, but I could not respond to you, then. I even did something shameful." Elvis chuckled and rubbed Gu Meng Meng's waist, saying, "Silly, that was not a dream." Chapter 540. Gu Meng Meng instinctively opened her arms to protect Elvis, looking at Snake warily, not daring to say a word. The pain all over her body, as if she had been run over by a car, told her what she had just experienced. But it was not illegal to sleep with her own husband. Why did she feel as if she was caught in the act? Gu Meng Meng turned back to look at Elvis, nodding her head in confirmation. That's right, the one she slept with was her own husband. Seeing how Gu Meng Meng was protecting Elvis, Snake felt even more frustrated. He hooked his finger and said, "Come over, or I will kill them." Gu Meng Meng bit her lower lip, using the beast's skin to wrap herself up tightly, supporting her exhausted body to slowly take a small step towards Snake. Snake frowned, hooking his finger in his direction, gesturing for Gu Meng Meng to come closer. Gu Meng Meng turned back to look at Elvis, taking another small step towards Snake. Snake's patience had run out. He raised his snake tail and whipped it towards Elvis. Gu Meng Meng could not react in time. She reached out and pounced towards Snake's snake tail, wanting to use her own body to block this attack. Elvis's reaction was much faster than Gu Meng Meng's. Before the snake tail touched Gu Meng Meng, he turned around and protected her in his arms, using his own back to receive Snake's tail. Snake himself was also shocked by Gu Meng Meng. He held back much of his strength. If not, this whip would have directly split Elvis into two. Elvis spat out a mouthful of blood. Gu Meng Meng was so anxious that she cried, holding on to Elvis tightly, shouting, "Leah, Leah, quickly come and look at Elvis." Leah walked forward, pulled Elvis out from Gu Meng Meng's arms and placed him at the side, then held on to Gu Meng Meng's shoulders with both hands. Looking straight into her eyes, he said calmly, "Don't do such things in the future, understand?" Gu Meng Meng had no idea what Leah was talking about. She just wanted Leah to quickly treat Elvis, so she nodded perfunctorily, "I know, I know, I know." Leah saw through Gu Meng Meng's perfunctory act. He sighed, then said in a serious tone, "Do you know that you almost scared Elvis and I to death when you were poisoned this time? If anything happens to you, we won't be able to die in peace. If we still have any weight in your heart, promise me that you will prioritize your own safety under any circumstances. As long as you're fine, the two of us can definitely pull through. Do not expose yourself to danger for anyone. Do you understand? Elvis clutched his chest as he looked at Gu Mengmeng. His gaze was clearly the same as Li's. Only on this point, he would not indulge Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, I know, I promise I won't do it again. Hurry and take a look at Elvis, he's badly injured. Leah then released his grip and turned around to check on Elvis's injuries. Elvis gave her a reassuring smile, wanting her to believe that he was fine and that he was fine. However, his body was badly mutilated, and his face was ashen. With a single glance, one could see that he was weak and fragile. How could a smile be able to deceive the world? Snake's tail was trembling as he resisted the urge to attack. Narrowing his eyes, he used his tail to wrap Gu Mengmeng up and swam out of the cave. The night sky was as dark as ink, thick and heavy, but it could not conceal the fierce anger emanating from Snake's body. Gu Mengmeng felt as if she could see black smoke billowing from Snake's body. Digression. It's time to say goodbye to my babies again. Chapter 541. Where are we going? Gu Mengmeng asked timidly. Snake stopped in his tracks but did not turn back to look at Gu Mengmeng. To where? He had not thought about it either. He just did not want to see Gu Mengmeng and Elvis being so lovey-dovey in the cave again, so he brought Gu Mengmeng out before he killed Elvis. Snake, about biting you in the day today. I'm sorry, I apologize. Gu Mengmeng decided to be a good girl who was brave enough to admit her mistakes. Seeing Snake's back stiffen, she shivered and immediately tried to excuse herself, but that was because you hurt my hubby first, so I bit you in a moment of desperation. As the saying goes, the one who provoked me first is cheap, you are also half responsible for this. Snake took a deep breath, turned his head and said with a black face, don't ever mention your wild men in front of me again, or else I have 10,000 ways to make you watch me tear them apart, and you won't even be able to hurt yourself. Gu Mengmeng knew that Snake definitely had that kind of ability. Elvis might be strong outside, but in front of a pervert like Snake, the difference in their abilities was too great. Even someone like Gu Mengmeng, who did not really understand what the hierarchy meant, could tell that this was like a WTO wrestler beating up a primary school student. I won't mention, then don't be angry. Snake's face was cold as he stretched out a hand, palm facing upwards, to Meng. Gu Mengmeng reflexively placed her hand in his palm, then smiled bitterly. She was just like a domesticated pet dog. Snake held Gu Mengmeng's little hand, then his emotions calmed down. He slowly kept his snake tail and transformed back into his human form, pulling Gu Mengmeng into his arms, hugging her before letting go. Gu Mengmeng felt a little awkward. She pointed at Snake's arm and asked, does the wound still hurt? Snake looked down at the wound that had already healed completely and frowned. How did it heal so quickly? If it had not healed, would she also look at him with the same gaze she used to look at Elvis's wound? Snake thought for a moment, then placed his hand by his mouth, sticking out his poisonous fangs and biting down. What are you doing? Gu Mengmeng was shocked and reached out to grab Snake's arm. But Snake dodged backwards and said with a cold face, my blood is poisonous, you can't touch it. Gu Mengmeng retracted her hand awkwardly and took a small step back. She stretched her neck and pointed at Snake's arm. Your teeth are poisonous too, right? Snake nodded and said, deadly poison. Gu Mengmeng thought for a while and asked, so is your teeth more poisonous or your blood more poisonous? But, if you show symptoms of being poisoned, which poison should I detoxify first? Do you have the antidote? Give it to me in advance. Snake was stunned for a moment before he suddenly laughed. Are you an idiot? How did I get poisoned by myself? Gu Mengmeng stared at Snake in a daze and smiled. Isn't this great? He looked good when he smiled. Why did you have to keep a straight face all day long, as if someone owed you $8 million? Why bother? Snake was stunned by Gu Mengmeng's words. He reached out to touch the corner of his lips. He was actually, really smiling. Nice to look at? Snake asked carefully. Chapter 542. When Snake brought Gu Mengmeng back to the cave, Elvis and Leah had already disappeared. Gu Mengmeng wanted to ask, but she did not dare to open her mouth when she saw Snake's "if you dare to ask, I will kill them immediately" expression. But looking at the roasted meat that was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, Gu Mengmeng felt much more at ease. Other than Leah, no one else could roast meat of this standard. He still had the mood to roast meat, which meant that he and Elvis were at least safe. With this understanding, Gu Mengmeng felt much more relaxed. Once she relaxed, Gu Mengmeng also started to feel hungry. After all, she had only eaten a little fruit for the past 2 to 3 days. Gu Mengmeng squatted beside the roasted meat, looked at Snake and asked, "Is this for me?" Snake replied with a cold, "Yeah," then sat at the side and watched Gu Mengmeng eat heartily. Snake did not know why, but he just felt that the food in Gu Mengmeng's hands was exceptionally delicious, so he leaned closer, opened his mouth and said, "Ah." Gu Mengmeng looked at Snake's pleading expression and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Why was this fellow's personality so polarizing? When he was angry, he could not differentiate between friend and foe, and was unreasonable. But when he was calm, he could look so cute and arrogant, making people speechless. Gu Mengmeng tore off a piece of roasted meat and sent it into Snake's mouth. Snake chewed it seriously, then swallowed it. It was quite delicious, right? Perhaps. There was no taste of meat, and it was not as fresh as eating immediately after being slaughtered. It was also a little hot. The texture was really ordinary, but when paired with Gu Mengmeng's smiling face, it seemed to have a chemical reaction, making it so unpalatable and unique. Gu Mengmeng stared at Snake's face for a long time, but could not tell whether he liked it or not. Or did he not like it? "Do you still want more?" Gu Mengmeng asked. Snake shook his head and said, "You eat, I will watch you eat." Gu Mengmeng did not stand on ceremony with him. This was prepared by Leah for her. Gu Mengmeng's mood improved as she ate the roasted meat in big mouthfuls. After Gu Mengmeng was full, Snake sat beside her and asked, "Are you afraid of snakes?" Gu Mengmeng nodded her head honestly and said, "I'm not afraid of many animals, but snakes are definitely at the king level. When I went to the zoo, there was a picture of a huge python with a human. As long as I saw it, I would run away and not dare to challenge it. Just the thought of a snake touching me makes my whole body uncomfortable. Hey, look, even my hair is standing on end." Snake looked at the hairs on Gu Mengmeng's arms that were standing up straight and he was a little disappointed. "Wolves are also very ferocious animals. Why don't I see you being afraid?" Gu Mengmeng smiled. "Who says I'm not afraid? You don't even know how scared I was the first time I saw Elvis's original body. I almost fainted. For a very long time, I always felt that Elvis and Leah were keeping me as a reserve food and would eat me anytime." Upon hearing Gu Mengmeng's words, Snake felt much better. "In the future, will you slowly stop being afraid of snakes?" Snake asked. Gu Mengmeng thought for a while and shook her head. "Not sure, I am really, not afraid of snakes." Snake frowned and asked, "Are you afraid of me?" Gu Mengmeng did not answer but asked back, "Do you want me to be afraid of you?" Snake remained silent for a long time and did not reply. He just looked at Gu Mengmeng quietly. Aside from the topic. Chapter 543. Gu Mengmeng felt pressured by Snake's stare. She smacked her lips and sorted out her words before saying, "Actually, you are quite nice when you are not angry. Although you are a little awkward, you are not hard to get along with. But when you are angry, tsk, you are definitely possessed by a demon king. It is too scary." Snake looked at Gu Mengmeng and suddenly smiled. "It is good that you know to be afraid. Don't provoke me in the future." Gu Mengmeng cupped her fists and said, "All right, mighty king." Snake was amused by her comical look and the lump of stuffy air in his chest slowly dissipated. He cleared his throat and asked, "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere else?" Gu Mengmeng seriously felt around and said, "I just feel that I do not have much strength. Everything else is fine." Snake said, "You were the one who bit me but you still had to ask me to save you. Why are you so useless?" Gu Mengmeng was speechless. She turned her face to the side and refused to talk to Snake. Snake stretched out his hand and shouted, "Tu Meng." Gu Mengmeng reflexively placed her hand on Snake's and was instantly held. Gu Mengmeng really wanted to give herself a slap. Where was her dignity? Where was her dignity? Snake smiled faintly and said, "It is finally warm again." Gu Mengmeng glanced sideways at Snake's cold face and asked, "Today, must have made you worried too?" Snake's expression froze and he said, "No." Gu Mengmeng could not help but laugh. She did not expose him or go along with him. She just looked at Snake. Snake cleared his throat and said, "I saved you because I have something to ask you. So I cannot let you die for now." Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "What do you want to ask?" Snake was silent for a moment before he slowly opened his mouth and said, "I want to know, that world of yours, what is it like?" Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. She asked tentatively, "You mean, the world of the beast deity?" Snake shook his head and said, "I know that you are not from the beast world but another independent world. The people there do not know how to transform and know many strange things. But their physiques are extremely weak. Not to mention orcs, even ordinary wild beasts can easily kill them." Gu Mengmeng's expression gradually lost control as she looked at Snake with a heated gaze. How did you know?" Snake looked back at Gu Mengmeng and said, "My mother beast is the previous messenger of the beast deity." Cough, cough, cough. Gu Mengmeng choked and coughed until her face turned red and she could not say a word. "Your mother is a joker, but you're a freakishly strong tsundere. This gene had mutated, right? Wasn't the difference too big?" Tu Meng. Snake's expression was rather solemn. He wanted to pat Gu Mengmeng's back to soothe her breathing, but he realized that the spot where he had bitten himself was still bleeding. He retracted his hand forcefully and could only watch as Gu Mengmeng coughed like a dog in front of him. "Wait a minute." Gu Mengmeng finally stopped coughing and turned to look at Snake. "The previous messenger of the beast deity is your mother, so. Leader, how old are you this year?" Snake cleared his throat and said evasively, "About, over 1,000 years old." Chapter 544. Snake used his uninjured hand to hold on to Gu Mengmeng's little hand that was poking his face. He gestured for her to sit properly and said, "I have never seen my mother before. When she died, I was still an egg. All my memories of my mother originated from my father's inherited memories. I don't know if it is because of my father's memories. I am very curious about her." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. She said with a face full of shock, "Don't tell me you mistook your father's feelings for your mother as your feelings for your mother?" Gu Mengmeng was surprised that her tongue did not get knotted after she finished her sentence like a tongue twister. Snake looked at Gu Mengmeng. After a long while, he shook his head and said, "I didn't know in the past. But now I know that there is a difference between curiosity and liking someone." Gu Mengmeng sat beside Snake and patted him on the shoulder. "Yeah, you must have the right values. You must have the basic ethics." Snake nodded. Gu Mengmeng sat beside Snake and patted his shoulder. Snake sneered. He poked Gu Mengmeng's little head and said, "Acting mature in front of me?" Thinking of Snake's 1,000-odd years of age, Gu Mengmeng still sat obediently and said seriously, No, I don't dare to." Snake raised his brows and said, "Are you despising me for being old?" Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips. She could not hold back her laughter and said, Sorry, I have never seen a demon who has lived for more than 1,000 years. I am too excited, let me laugh for a while." Seeing Gu Mengmeng squatting at the side and laughing like a dog, the corners of Snake's lips curled up unknowingly. He just quietly watched her laugh like a fool. When she was tired of laughing, she leaned against the stone platform and looked up at Snake. She said, "Sorry, I have laughed enough. That, let me laugh for a while more." Snake was not angry. He just quietly watched Gu Mengmeng laugh until she could not make a sound. When she was laughing so hard that she couldn't make a sound, he poked her head and said, "Stop laughing, or I'll eat you up." Gu Mengmeng tried to hold back her laughter. She calmed herself down and said, "Your face does not look more than 20 years old. It is really too deceptive." So I could not hold it in and laughed a little exaggeratedly. "Old man, please forgive me." Snake raised his eyebrows, gritted his teeth and repeated, "Elder?" Gu Mengmeng felt a chill down her spine. She smiled apologetically and said, "Leader, I was wrong. I am an old lady, I am an old lady." Snake pinched her little face and did not argue with her. He only said quietly, "I really want to know what those things in my memory are like. That's why I once traveled around the beast world but couldn't find a female like her. Later on, I forgot how I came to this place and unknowingly, I had stayed here for a very long time. Then this place was called the Snake King Valley. There was obviously no one who could stop me, but I could not even take a step out of this place." Gu Mengmeng listened attentively to Snake's words and waited for him to finish before asking, "You joined forces with Cole because you were curious about your mother?" Snake was displeased as he raised his head and said, "It's not an alliance, he's the one presenting me a treasure." Gu Mengmeng pointed at her own nose and said, "The treasure he offered is me?" Snake nodded and said, "He said he would bring the new messenger of the beast deity to me and present her to me. I accepted, that's all." Chapter 545. Would you believe me if I said it had nothing to do with me? Snake asked instead of answering. Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "As long as you say it, I will believe you." Snake asked, "Why?" Gu Mengmeng smiled faintly and said, "With your abilities, you don't have to go through so much trouble to catch me. Even if you don't use the little wolves to threaten me, I have nowhere to escape to." Snake curled his lips and raised his brows. "Since you already know, why are you still asking?" Gu Mengmeng shrugged and said, "No matter what, you have to give people a chance to explain themselves." Snake did not say anything and just looked at Gu Mengmeng quietly. After a long silence, he said, "It's not me." Gu Mengmeng smiled and nodded, saying, "Then I have no more questions. What do you want to know about that world?" "I can tell you everything I know." Snake thought about it but shook his head. Gu Mengmeng was confused. "Aren't you very curious about the world your mother originally lived in?" Snake looked down at his and Gu Mengmeng's shadows under the moonlight and remained silent for a moment before saying, "I used to be very curious, but I don't know when it started. I only remember that I was very curious, but I can't even remember what I was curious about." Gu Mengmeng thought about it and agreed. It had been over 1,000 years. Any kind of curiosity should have been washed away in the face of such a long time. Using her shoulder to bump Snake, Gu Mengmeng said, "Your mother is super funny, do you know that?" Snake looked at Gu Mengmeng's sparkling eyes and shook his head lightly, saying, "In my memory, she was very serious, very dignified and always looked like she was out of reach. Even when there were no outsiders around, she would always have a lot on her mind. Even my beast father did not know what she was thinking about. As far as I can remember, she has never smiled like this before, nor has she ever cried as freely as you do. She never let others know what she cared about, what she liked or hated. She was completely different from you." Gu Mengmeng looked at Snake with a "whoever believes you is an idiot" expression and said, "You mean to say that your mother is the one who walks the cold and aloof path, while I am the snail running on the joking path, right?" Snake nodded his head slowly with a sincere expression. Gu Mengmeng slapped her thighs and jumped up. She had wanted to stand opposite Snake, but her little hand was still in his grasp and she could not pull it out. As a result, this jump almost caused her to fall. Snake instinctively reached out to catch her, but realized that the wound on his arm had not healed completely, so he could only forcefully retract his outstretched hand. Then, he used all his strength to pull her little hand back into his arms in a parabola. Gu Mengmeng only felt her vision blur, and by the time she stabilized herself, she was already lying on Snake's chest. She raised her little face and blinked her eyes at Snake's green eyes that were inches away from hers. Clearing her throat, she said, "All right, I am a joker." Snake smiled faintly and placed Gu Mengmeng in his arms. "Sit down and talk. Don't move." Gu Mengmeng shifted her butt and said, I can just sit at the side and talk." Snakel retracted his arm and held Gu Mengmeng tightly. It's safest in my arms. You won't get hurt. Gu Mengmeng sighed and accepted her fate helplessly. Who asked her to almost fall flat on her face when she tried to stand up just now? Passive, too passive. Chapter 546. Your mother is the messenger of the beast deity and I am also the messenger of the beast deity, so we are colleagues. Shouldn't you call me auntie? Gu Mengmeng put on the kind smile of an old auntie and said, Come, call me Auntie Mengmeng. Snake looked at Gu Mengmeng as if he was looking at an idiot and said, The so-called messenger of the beast deity is just someone who transmigrated from another world to complete a certain mission. You and my mother beast are probably not that close. As Snake said, he pinched Gu Mengmeng's chin and squinted his eyes, saying with a faint smile, Moreover, I am over 1,000 years old. Do you dare to agree to call you auntie? Gu Mengmeng pouted and said, Forget it, the cost of being your auntie is too high. You are old so you are right, don't take advantage of your seniority, please continue. Snake sneered and released Gu Mengmeng's chin. He rested his head on Gu Mengmeng's shoulder and his gaze landed on the mating mark on her collarbone. Tell me, how did you transmigrate? Snake asked nonchalantly. Gu Mengmeng felt even more aggrieved when she mentioned this and said indignantly, I also want to know why I transmigrated. Moreover, your mother at least brought along 300 poems of the Tang dynasty and a ballpoint pen when she transmigrated. I only wore a damn bikini. If a messenger of the beast deity really descends after 1,000 years, she will definitely think that I am more of a joke than your mother. Bikini? Snake raised his eyes and asked, emphasizing the main point. Gu Mengmeng nodded perfunctorily and said, Yeah, it's the clothes I wear when I swim. I originally wanted to confess to my heartthrob senior, TSK, this is even more troublesome. I said it the last time and Elvis and Leah are still trying to find out about senior from time to time. I feel like I had an affair but I clearly didn't do anything, yet I can't explain it clearly. Sobs, sobs, sobs. I feel bitter in my heart but I won't say it, won't say it. Snake laughed and said, But you have already said it. Gu Mengmeng rolled her eyes at Snake and did not continue the conversation. She changed the topic and continued discussing your mother. Do you know, your mother is too talented. Using a book of 300 poems of the Tang dynasty to deceive the Sauter tribe for over 1,000 years, that Cole, when he was verifying my identity previously, the secret code was hoeing rice at noon. Tisk, shouldn't you be a little more formal when you want to verify the password? Something like, the heavenly king covers the earth tiger or the pagoda suppresses the river demon or something. At the very least, it should be open sesame, right? How could it be hoeing in the middle of the day? I think you're definitely not close to your mother. What do you mean by aloof or dignified? It must be a misunderstanding. Snake nodded and said, I have never met her before. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and looked at Snake apologetically. I'm sorry, it was a slip of the tongue. I didn't mean to make you sad. Snake tilted his head and looked at Gu Mengmeng's bright eyes, asking, I'm sad? Why? Gu Mengmeng blinked her eyes, not knowing how to answer the question. She thought to herself, your mother has been dead for 1,000 years. Isn't it too late for me to say I'm sorry for her? Chapter 547. Oh. Gu Mengmeng rubbed her face and adjusted her expression before looking at Snake and asking, Since you have your father's memories, can you analyze it with me? Why did your mother make others offer 300 poems of the Tang dynasty as some esoteric manual? Snake could not help but laugh as he looked at Gu Mengmeng. To protect you. Me? Gu Mengmeng pointed at her own nose and asked in confusion. Snake nodded his head and continued, the so-called messengers of the beast deity are mostly smart but not powerful enough. If you do not have an insurance mechanism to prove your identity, there is a high possibility that you will lose your life before becoming a messenger of the beast deity. My mother beast left behind that book and a foolishly loyal tribe to be your protective talisman. It's a pity that the current tribe leader is not a loyal one. Gu Mengmeng nodded her head in agreement and said, But your mother is already very nature-defying. Solder can survive for thousands of years with the name of the messengers of the beast deity and no one dares to offend them. This shows how awesome your mother is. Snake rubbed Gu Mengmeng's little head and said, "Didn't you say she was a joker just now?" Gu Mengmeng laughed awkwardly and said, "You can't blame me for this. Do you know what the prayers and dance for blessings that your mother has passed down are? What the King divine song, Little Apple, and it's even in English. Let me tell you, if it wasn't for the bunch of girls in my hostel who let loose, I would never know this song even if I died." Snake raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh? Let me hear it." Gu Mengmeng had the urge to bite her tongue and commit suicide. She shook her head and said, No, that divine song of the square does not suit my cold temperament." Snake raised his head and said, "If you don't sing, I will eat you up." Gu Mengmeng frowned and said, "Tsk, can you be more creative? Using the same trick to threaten people will lose its effectiveness." Snake narrowed his eyes and slowly opened his mouth, revealing his poisonous fangs dripping with venom. He slowly approached Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng was terrified and said, "Mighty king, calm down. I will sing, all right?" Snake regained his cool in a second and looked at Gu Mengmeng with a "please start your performance" expression. Gu Mengmeng tugged at her wrist and said, "Great king, can you loosen your grip first?" Snake shook his head and said, "Just sing like this." "All right." Gu Mengmeng cleared her throat and sang the Chinese version of Little Apple, interspersing the English lyrics in between. Actually, she was a little embarrassed to sing this song, especially when she felt like dancing along as she sang, as if she was possessed. Gu Mengmeng's eyes lit up. That night, Snakel gave Gu Mengmeng special permission to sleep late. He watched her dance, Little Apple, for half the night with a smile in his eyes, until she was so tired that she laid on the ground and refused to get up. Only then did he wrap her up in a beast skin, before stretching his arms out to sleep at a distance of 2 arms away from her. His body was too cold, even his blood was cold. He wanted to get closer to her, but he knew that no matter how warm she was, she could not warm up his ice-cold soul that had been frozen for 1,000 years. Instead of causing her to fall sick again, why not let her maintain her own warmth, while he just watched from afar? Anyway, he was already used to the cold. The next morning, Gu Mengmeng was woken up by a loud clamor. "Snake, get out here right now. I want to challenge you." Chapter 548. Snake tugged at Gu Mengmeng's hand that was rubbing her eyes and leaned forward. He stuck out his tongue and licked it lightly. Gu Mengmeng shuddered and instantly lost all her sleepiness. She moved back and said, Don't, you make me feel like you are a pervert." Snake was not angry and just said, "In my memory, the father beast would treat the mother beast like this every morning and the mother beast would reveal a rare smile." Gu Mengmeng was stunned and asked, "Did your father do this before or after your mother woke up?" Snake shook his head, indicating that he could not remember clearly. Gu Mengmeng explained patiently, "If he kisses your mother's eyes before she wakes up, that is a gentle wake-up call. But if he licks her eyes after she wakes up, that is a pervert, understand?" Snake frowned and looked at Gu Mengmeng in confusion. Gu Mengmeng cupped Snake's face and said, "Close your eyes." Snake did as he was told and closed his eyes. Gu Mengmeng's lips landed lightly on Snake's eyes. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, she left swiftly. Then, she said gently, "Darling, wake up." Snake's heart skipped a beat. He opened his eyes and saw Gu Mengmeng's gentle smiling face right in front of him. He felt a little dazed. She clearly could not have known the scene at that time, but Snake had a feeling that Gu Mengmeng's version was the correct way his parents interacted. He could not say a word and could only stare at Gu Mengmeng in a daze. Gu Mengmeng chuckled and backed away. She said, "Hey, this is the correct way to wake up a husband and wife. Eating eye wax or something, that is too unconventional." Snake nodded and did not say a word. He only felt his throat tightening and something in his chest could not be controlled. Irritated, this feeling was irritated, right? He really wanted to grind something to vent the energy that was rampaging around in his body. What should he grind? Gu Mengmeng was not a good choice. She was too weak and could not be pieced back together if he did not control it well. Snake, don't think that I don't know you are inside. If you don't come out, I will go in. The clamor at the door continued. Snake's eyes widened and his lips curled into an evil smile. Oh, just grind him to pieces. Gu Mengmeng's hand was still held in Snake's palm, so she could only passively follow him as he walked out. The moment she exited the cave, the sunlight was a little blinding. Gu Mengmeng squinted her eyes and reached out to block the sunlight. Snake noticed her discomfort and quickly carried her up, using his chest to provide her with some shade. He supported her little but with one hand and caressed the back of her head with the other, hugging Gu Mengmeng like a child. He looked at the other snake beast standing at the entrance of the cave with the attitude of a father bringing his daughter to the amusement park and being robbed by bullies. He frowned and said impatiently, "You're so noisy." Wait. The snake beast widened its eyes and pointed at Gu Mengmeng in Snake's arms as if he had seen a ghost. Who is she? Tell me, what's going on between the two of you? Chapter 549. While Gu Mengmeng was sizing up the snake beast was also sizing her up. It was just that she could not see anything else from that horrified expression. But why did Gu Mengmeng feel that this situation was a little familiar? She remembered. When she had just arrived at Saint Nazaire, Nina seemed to be looking for trouble with her in the same manner. But this snake beast in front of her was obviously a male. Was it right to act like the first wife beating up the third wife? Gu Mengmeng looked at the snake beast with a confused expression, then at Snake. She hesitated and hesitated, but still opened her mouth to ask, "Are you two good gay friends?" The snake beast did not know what good gay friends were, but Snake knew. His face instantly darkened as he gritted his teeth and said, "No." The snake beast took a step forward and roared in an unconvinced manner, "I am Wabi, the one who will defeat Snake and become the new Snake King. We are enemies, not friends." Gu Mengmeng felt the thick aura of a Chinibu and laughed dryly. "Sir, how old are you?" Wabi raised his upper body and looked at Gu Mengmeng with an insufferably arrogant look. "What do you mean?" Gu Mengmeng was just about to explain when Snake placed Gu Mengmeng on a rock at the side. The rock was warm from the sun and it was quite comfortable. The colorful snakes immediately surrounded her and marked out a safe zone, just like the circle that Sun Wukong drew for Tripiaka every time he went to pray, but the area was bigger. But with Gu Mengmeng's fear of snakes, she did not dare to move even if the area was bigger. Who knew which snake would suddenly think that she was going to escape and bite her? "Don't move, wait for me, very soon." Snake placed Gu Mengmeng's hand by his lips and mimicked her kissing his eyes, kissing the back of her hand, "Darling." Gu Mengmeng wanted to explain that what she did just now was just recreating the scene and putting herself in his shoes to tell him that kissing his eyes was the correct way to say good morning. Darling was not a casual way to say. Did he think he was Taob's customer service? "You call everyone dear?" Snake did not give Gu Mengmeng a chance to explain. He turned around and transformed into a giant snake. His posture was similar to Wabi, with a human body and a snake tail. However, when the two of them stood side by side, it was obvious that they were taller. Snake's entire body was green and the color was much darker than usual. The oppressive feeling was also stronger. Even Gu Mengmeng, who could not feel the beast pressure, felt suffocated. She stopped breathing and did not even dare to breathe loudly. She was extremely nervous. On the other hand, Wabi shook his tail, looking eager to try. His smile was a little creepy. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like a pervert. Snake did not want to be entangled with Wabi and swung his snake tail directly at his abdomen. The scales on his tail were in an exploding state, and if he were to be swept by this attack, he would probably end up with his flesh torn apart. Although Wabi's body was big, he was not clumsy. On the contrary, he was especially agile. When he saw Snake swinging his tail at him, he crouched down and stuck close to the ground to avoid Snake's attack. At the same time, he charged towards Snake like an arrow leaving the bow, as if intending to engage in close combat. Snake laughed coldly and stood still on the spot, allowing Wabi to attack him. When Wabi-Ai's poisonous fangs almost touched his abdomen, Snake suddenly transformed into a snake, opened his mouth wide and bit down on Wabi-Ai's weak spot. He raised his body and flung Wabi-Ai into a thick noodle, a noodle without a soul. Aside from the topic, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. I hope every baby has someone to accompany them. I hope you will have someone to care for you when you are sad, someone to rely on when you are tired, and someone to share your happiness with. Chapter 550. Snake had no intention of letting Wabi-Ai off. His thick snake body coiled around Wabi-Ai tightly, strangling him inch by inch. The two of them, whom Gu Mengmeng had mistaken as a gay couple just a moment ago, twisted into a match-sh*t fried dough twist. The scene was too gory and Gu Mengmeng did not dare to watch. She hugged her knees and buried her face in them. Snakes were indeed too scary. Not long after, a pair of cold hands lightly tapped Gu Mengmeng's arm and a cold voice rang above her head, "Tu Meng." Gu Mengmeng looked up and the first thing she saw was a hand with its palm facing upwards, followed by Snake's devilish face. Gu Mengmeng hesitated for a moment and raised her tiny fist in mid-air, not daring to place it in Snake's hand. Snake raised his brows and said unhappily, "Hmm?" Gu Mengmeng pouted and said, "Did you wash your hands after grabbing sh*t just now?" Snake was taken aback. He turned back to look at the bloody Wabi-Ai and suddenly searched his memory for a scene related to sh*t. Other animals' sh*t seemed different from Snake's. Snake felt as if he had suffered an internal injury. He felt that he might never be willing to accept Wabi-Ai's challenge again. Slowly retracting his hand, Snake sighed and said, "Let's go." Gu Mengmeng did not move. She hugged her knees and sat on the spot. She looked at Snake and asked, "Where to?" Snake looked at his own hands silently and said, "To wash my hands." Gu Mengmeng laughed unkindly, but still stood up and followed behind Snake. When she passed by Wabi-Ai who was lying on the ground, Gu Mengmeng asked, "What about him?" Snake stopped and turned back to ask, "Do you want to eat sh*t? Do you want to eat snakes?" Gu Mengmeng was so scared that her face turned pale. She ran to Snake's side and said, No, I'm not interested at all. Let's go and wash our hands." Snake frowned as he looked at Gu Mengmeng avoiding snakes. He said quietly, "Actually, snake meat is quite delicious." Gu Mengmeng was stunned. She turned to look at Snake with a stiff neck and said, "Why do males like to persuade others to eat themselves?" Snake looked back at Gu Mengmeng and said, "Eat myself." Gu Mengmeng did not say anything. She just looked at Snake quietly, as if waiting for an answer. Snake shook his head and said, "There's nothing else in the Snake King Valley, but there are plenty of snakes. It won't be too late to eat me after you finish eating them." Gu Mengmeng's gaze landed on Wabi-Ai who was standing behind Snake. She twitched her mouth and shook her head, turning to run. No, I can't bring myself to do it." Snake also turned back to look at Wabi-Ai and nodded. "Yeah, it is a little disgusting." The two of them chatted as they walked to the lakeside. Gu Mengmeng squatted down and scooped up a handful of water to wash her face. Then, she retreated to a spot further away from the shore. Snake, on the other hand, was relaxed. He swam his entire body into the lake, his snake tail swaying gently in the water. His upper body that was above the water maintained his human form. He asked, "You're afraid of water?" Gu Mengmeng shook her head. "I am a little white dragon in the waves. Only Sun Yang can swim faster than me." Snake did not know Sun Yang and was not interested. He only asked, "Then why didn't you enter the water?" Gu Mengmeng picked up a stone and threw it into the water. She smiled faintly and answered, "Someone's heart would beat erratically the moment he saw me near the lake. He was so nervous that he would be abandoned. So I promised him not to go near the lake." Aside from the topic, Happy Valentine's Day. Chapter 551. Snake swam to Gu Mengmeng's side and laid his upper body on the shore. He looked at her and asked, "Why?" Gu Mengmeng did not want to tell him about how she tried to jump into the lake to transmigrate back to the modern world after she was heartbroken, but was mistaken as a suicide attempt. She just avoided the topic and said, I transmigrated from the lake, so he was afraid that I would be pulled back once I got close to the lake. Snake sneered and reached out his long arm to grab Gu Mengmeng's ankle. Gu Mengmeng swayed a few times in a panic and finally fell into Snake's slightly cold arms. With a plop, Snake carried Gu Mengmeng and fell back into the lake. Gu Mengmeng's swimming ability was not bad and she managed to maintain her balance after a few flops. She glared at Snake and asked, What are you doing? Snake used his snake tail to lift Gu Mengmeng up gently. His ice-cold fingers brushed past Gu Mengmeng's face and tidied her wet hair. He said, Tell that certain someone to stop worrying. Even if you drown yourself in the lake, you won't be able to transmigrate back. Gu Mengmeng was stunned for a moment. She suddenly grabbed onto Snake's shoulders excitedly and asked, You know how to transmigrate back? Snake's expression darkened. His jade-green eyes reflected the ripples in the water. He opened his thin lips and said slowly, Yeah, I know. Should I tell you? Gu Mengmeng was suddenly stunned. Want to know? Want to? She had panicked when she first came to the beast world. She was frightened by these monsters, who could turn from beasts into humans and run around naked. She had also complained about the lack of resources and entertainment, but other than the time she escaped after she was heartbroken, she had never thought of going back. Compared to the modern world, this place was more like her home. All the people she loved, the people who loved her, were here. Did she want to go back? What should she do after returning? Continue my unfinished university studies and struggle with one part-time job after another for the rest of my life? She had to admit that life in the beast world was too comfortable for her. Elvis and Leah gave her the best care. She had not lived such a peaceful and happy life since she was 7 years old. Gu Mengmeng slowly took a few steps back and looked at Snake with a confused gaze. But she still shook her head in the end. I don't want to know. I don't want to go back. I promised them that I wouldn't leave them behind. Snake seemed to be rather surprised. He stared at Gu Mengmeng with a rather stiff expression. Only when Gu Mengmeng had already swam ashore did he chase after her from behind. He did not transform back to his human form, but caught up with Gu Mengmeng in his half-orc form. He carried her in his arms and swam back to the cave. When they came back, a fire was already lit in the cave. There was a pot on the fire with stewed meat in it. He didn't need to taste it to know that it was Li's doing just by smelling it. Gu Mengmeng sat in front of the fire, hugging her knees. Her mind was in a daze and she could not tell what she was thinking. Snake's face would always linger in her mind. Yes, I know. Should I tell you? He had clearly rejected her, but he couldn't help but think about it. Gu Mengmeng sneaked a glance at Snake, and Snake's gaze coincidentally landed on Gu Mengmeng's face. He used his hand to gently rub Gu Mengmeng's face and said, Didn't you like the food he cooked? Why don't you eat? Chapter 552. There was clearly nothing worth staying in that world, but deciding not to go back and forgetting to go back were two different things. Gu Mengmeng did not know what she could not bear to part with. She just felt that it was difficult to breathe and something was about to spill out of her eyes uncontrollably. Snake frowned and cupped her little face, asking, Why are you crying all of a sudden? Is the food too disgusting? Gu Mengmeng shook her head and pursed her lips to suppress her emotions. She said in a nasal voice, I want to see my hubby, let me see him. I really need him now, really need him. Snake's face was as cold as ice and there was a dangerous factor swirling in his eyes. He caressed Gu Mengmeng's face with one hand and circled the back of her head with the other. He pressed down on her neck lightly and pushed her into his arms. His voice was filled with suppressed anger, calm but dangerous. What do you need? I will satisfy you. Gu Mengmeng shook her head and sobbed, I want my hubby. I want my hubby. Snake's brows were tightly knitted together and his voice became much colder. All right, then I will be your hubby. Gu Mengmeng pushed Snake away and resisted his hug. Like a mischievous child, she shouted with tears and snot all over her face, I don't want you, I want my hubby, let me see my hubby, sob sob. I want my hubby. Snake gritted his teeth. The irritated feeling made him want to bite this troublemaking girl to death. But his poisonous fangs seemed to be stuck to his mouth and he could not say a word. Taking a deep breath, Snake let go of Gu Mengmeng. He did not say anything and just turned to leave the cave. Gu Mengmeng wanted to follow him out too. She wanted to find Elvis and Leah. But the cave entrance was completely blocked by colorful snakes. Unless Gu Mengmeng wriggled through the snakes, there was no way she could leave the cave. Gu Mengmeng felt extremely wronged and sat on the ground, crying loudly. She cried until she was exhausted. Then, she lay on the ground and fell asleep. When Elvis arrived, he saw Gu Mengmeng sobbing as she slept on the ground. She always had a way to make his heart ache. Elvis frowned and took 2 steps forward to hug Gu Mengmeng. The familiar smell and warmth made Gu Mengmeng feel at ease, but her eyes were too swollen and she was really too tired from crying just now, so Gu Mengmeng could only find a comfortable angle in Elvis's arms and continue sleeping. When she woke up, it was already past midnight. Besides Elvis, Leah was also called over. The 2 males were in their original forms, protecting Gu Mengmeng in the middle, one on the left and one on the right. The moment she opened her eyes, she had an illusion that she was still in the cave at Saint Nazaire. You cried and called the 2 of them over just to sleep with you. The cold voice pulled Gu Mengmeng back to reality. She looked up at Snake who was standing on top of her head and grabbed onto Elvis like a startled bird. She shrunk into his arms with all her might, wishing she could just bury herself in his chest. Elvis had no choice but to transform into his human form and pull her into his arms. He patted her back gently and comforted her. It's all right, it's all right. Xiao Meng, don't be scared, I'm here. Gu Mengmeng nodded her head obediently. She only used her nose to reply with a before she felt like crying again. Chapter 553. Burp. Gu Mengmeng was so frightened that she burped, but she forced herself to hold back her tears. Elvis was helpless. He himself could not defeat Snake, and in addition, he was poisoned by him, so he could not muster up any strength. It was already very difficult for him to carry Gu Mengmeng. He wanted to put on the airs of a man to protect his wife, but he could not. He could only pat Gu Mengmeng's back lightly to calm her emotions, then looked at her with guilt and heartache, asking, "You're crying, just to make my heart ache?" Gu Mengmeng shook her head, then pounced into Elvis's arms, hugging him tightly. After calming her emotions, she said, "Snake said, he knows the way to let me go back." The moment Gu Mengmeng finished her sentence, she could clearly feel the arm hugging her tightened instinctively. Gu Mengmeng looked up, meeting Elvis's shocked, stunned, panicked and helpless blue eyes. She smiled sweetly, saying, "But, I didn't listen. I said, I don't want to go back, hubby, am I right?" Elvis felt as if a breath was stuck in his throat, and after hearing the second half of Gu Mengmeng's sentence, he exhaled with a smile. He hugged Gu Mengmeng tightly in his arms, one hand protecting her waist, the other supporting the back of her head, kissing her deeply on the lips. At that moment, no words could express his feelings. He did not know whether to say that it was good to have a new lease on life, or to say that he was lucky for 3 lifetimes. He only knew that he had never hated himself, a mere 5th-level orc, so weak in front of Snake. If not, the first thing he would have done was to kill Snake, so that the method to transmigrate back would remain a secret forever. Leah also transformed into a half-orc, his large furry tail gently protecting Gu Mengmeng's back. When Elvis finally let go of her, Leah then said, "This is a good thing, why are you crying?" Gu Mengmeng turned to look at Leah, her eyes were like the washed night sky, so innocent that it made one's heart ache. "I don't know, I just feel that I can never go back, it's very sad." Leah sighed, asking, "Can't bear to part with your swimsuit, Prince Charming?" Gu Mengmeng was stunned, her homesickness dissipating by half. She shook her head awkwardly, blaming Leah for ruining the atmosphere. Leah asked, "Then you can't bear to leave Jean?" Crack, the atmosphere was completely destroyed by Leah. Gu Mengmeng grabbed a small stone and threw it at Leah, saying, "How many times have I told you, Jean is a fictional character, there is no such person, no no no." Leah rubbed Gu Mengmeng's little head and said, all right, if you say no then no. It's just that if he comes knocking one day, tsk, Elvis, and I will not return you to him. Gu Mengmeng was going crazy. She punched Leah a few times in the air and said, I told you there's no such person. Leah smiled warmly and stared at Gu Mengmeng, nodding his head with a yeah, continue making up stories expression. Gu Mengmeng snorted before turning around and burrowing back into Elvis's arms. She knew that Leah was using his method to calm her down. And this method was obviously effective. She didn't want to cry anymore, and she felt that the way she had cried just now was so funny. Chapter 554. Elvis stroked Gu Mengmeng's little head, then smiled gently and said, your decision saved my life. Thank you, my queen. Gu Mengmeng's face turned red. Gu Mengmeng sniffled and leaned into Elvis's arms. She closed her eyes in bliss. Snake walked forward and picked Gu Mengmeng up from Elvis's arms, then said, all right, you two can leave now. Gu Mengmeng kicked her legs. I don't want to. I want to be with my hubby. Snake pulled Gu Mengmeng in front of him and stared at her with his vertical pupils. He said coldly, are you challenging my patience? Gu Mengmeng looked at Snake coldly. Gu Mengmeng wilted. She lost her confidence. At first, she was so flustered that she forgot about how scary Snake was when she was fooling around. But now that she had calmed down, she could no longer throw a tantrum without any restraint. Elvis and Leah didn't want to make things difficult for Gu Mengmeng, so they could only walk to her side and kiss her little hand. Xiao Meng, protect yourself well. That's the most important thing, do you understand? Snake stared at Gu Mengmeng's kissed hand in disgust. He pulled it back and simply hugged Gu Mengmeng. He glared at Elvis and Leah with a darkened face. I'll eat you if you don't leave now. The two of them felt helpless. They had never been so cowardly since they established Saint Nazir. But he was the Beast King. After Elvis and Leah left, Gu Mengmeng did not say a word. She just lay by the fire quietly with her back facing Snake. Snake had used 1,000 years to get used to loneliness. But Gu Mengmeng only used 2 to 3 days to get used to the noise. In the cave, Gu Mengmeng suddenly stopped talking, which made Snake feel that something was wrong. He sat behind Gu Mengmeng. He looked at the back of her head carefully. Clearing his throat, he asked, do you want me to bring you out to pluck some fruits? Gu Mengmeng replied, no. You kick the tree every time you disagree. You're going to wipe out the rare species sooner or later. Snake said, then, Gu Mengmeng said, I don't want to talk. Snake was silent for a moment. He felt a little lost. He was used to her being by his side. He had even forgotten how he had survived for the past 1,000 years. But he didn't have anything that could make her happy. As far as he knew, the only thing that could make her happy were those 2 males. Gu Mengmeng also felt the stifling atmosphere in the cave, but she was not in a good mood and did not want to bother about it. She simply covered her head with the beast skin and continued sleeping. The next morning, when Gu Mengmeng woke up, she realized that Snake was sitting right in front of her, staring at her with a, I'm not in a good mood, come and show me some concern expression. After a night's sleep, Gu Mengmeng's emotions had completely calmed down. She sat cross-legged and looked at Snake, asking, are you still angry? Snake shook his head and said, why don't you want to go back? Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. After a moment of silence, she lowered her head and smiled bitterly. Because in that world, there is no one waiting for me to return. Snake was silent for a moment, then he slowly opened his mouth and said, back then, she tried her best to go back. In order to gather all the divine weapons needed for transmigration, she was unscrupulous and unscrupulous. In the end, he failed on the verge of success. Chapter 555. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and inched closer. She hesitated for a moment before grabbing onto Snake's hand and said, maybe, there is someone in that world that she could not bear to part with. Snake chuckled and looked at Gu Mengmeng's little hand, saying, "This is the first time you have taken the initiative to hold my hand." Gu Mengmeng did not say anything and did not retract her hand. She just looked at Snake quietly because she knew that Snake had something to say. Snake used 2 breaths to adjust his emotions before saying, "The last divine weapon she needs is me." Gu Mengmeng was stunned and frowned slightly. Snake used his finger to gently smooth Gu Mengmeng's brows and said, "You are already ugly enough. If you make wrinkles, you will be even uglier." Gu Mengmeng chuckled and said, "Yeah, you are the expert in skin care, I will listen to you." Both of Snake's hands landed on Gu Mengmeng's in the end. He held on to her small fists as if they were a source of energy for him. He slowly started to recall the past that had been washed away by time and could no longer evoke any emotions. He said, "The key to activating the gate of transmigration is a blood relative of the Beast King level. No one knows what kind of agreement she made with the beast deity. Anyway, after she suddenly woke up, she ran to a cave and found my beast father who had just woken up from his hibernation. She proposed to mate with him. Then, there was me." Gu Mengmeng was a little dramatic. She suddenly thought of the scene in Legend of Mi Yu, where Sun Li held her stomach and said to the courtiers, "The late king sent me a dream and we had sex in the dream. In the end, when I woke up, I was pregnant." Ha ha ha. Snake did not know what Gu Mengmeng was thinking and continued, "Her other partners all loved her, were afraid of her and indulged her. But my father was different. Maybe it was the nature of a snake. His love was possessive and selfish. There was no such thing as sacrifice and fulfillment in a snake's dictionary. When he found out that she had mated with him just to give birth to a beast king's blood relative to open the door of transmigration and abandon him, he was furious. Hence, he threw me into a cold pond. I slept at the bottom of the pond for many years and did not know what happened after that. But when I woke up and broke out of my shell, there was no longer a messenger of the beast deity in this world. As for the memories I inherited, they only lasted until the moment when my father sank me to the bottom of the cold pond." Gu Mengmeng patted Snake's shoulder lightly. "At least you survived. That's good enough." Snake sneered, his gaze filled with a tinge of helplessness as he asked, "Do you really think that living and not dying is a good thing?" Gu Mengmeng could not answer this question. She remembered reading a sentence in a book, "1,000 years of life gives birth to 1,000 years of loneliness." The beginning of his life was a scheme and exploitation. He was even more unfortunate than himself. At least, before her father cheated on her, Gu Mengmeng had enjoyed a few years of parental love. Snake looked up, as if he had thought of something interesting. He asked, "Is there a beast king among your sons?" Gu Mengmeng's face froze. "No." Chapter 556. Gu Mengmeng's smile froze on her face for a moment. Indeed, ever since she came to the beast world, there seemed to be people confessing to her, expressing their goodwill and requesting to mate with her. Indeed, she could always see fanaticism, stubbornness, adoration and possessiveness in the eyes of various males. But Snake was a special case. His eyes were dark but clear, not the kind of clarity that came from someone who did not understand anything, but the kind of clarity that came from someone who had gone through many vicissitudes of life. Gu Mengmeng asked herself, even if she had started practicing 10,086 ways to seduce a snake demon, since she was in her mother's womb, with her less than 20 years of skills, she would not be able to play strange stories from a Chinese studio in front of a 1,000-year-old demon like Snake. Snake's special interest in her should be due to his curiosity towards her mother. If it was her, she would also want to know what was so good about that world that her mother was so obsessed with going back. She did not hesitate to abandon so many partners who had placed their lives in her hands, and even wanted to use her own bloodline as the key to open the door to transmigration. And this curiosity was not equivalent to adoration. Snake's hostility towards Elvis and the rest and his obvious possessiveness towards her were probably due to his snake nature. Selfish, greedy, that's all. Looking at it from another perspective, if one day you adopted a stray dog, and this dog was rather cute, foolishly wandering around in front of you every day, comforting your lonely soul and boring life. Then one day, the original owner of the dog came looking for you, saying, "This dog belongs to me, return it." If it was you, you would also feel uncomfortable, right? Of course, modern people have the most basic upbringing and etiquette, so if the original owner could provide sufficient evidence to prove that the dog really belonged to him, no matter how unwilling he was, he would still return it to him. At most, he would just discuss, "Add me on WeChat? Let me visit this idiot when it's convenient." But Snake was different. Just like what Elvis had said, in the beast world, taking by force was the right thing to do. Back then, Elvis broke off the beast horn that Orton used to share food and snatched it for Gu Mengmeng to play with. Not only did Elvis not feel that there was a problem, Orton also looked as though it was only natural for him to be snatched. "I can't beat you, so I deserve to be snatched by you." This was the accepted theory in the beast world. Even now, the logic was still the same. If Gu Mengmeng was a stray dog, Snake would have picked her up or snatched her. The original dog owner Elvis could not defeat Snake, so he could only watch helplessly as this dog recognized the snake as his master. Moreover, he even asked, "Snake King, can I add you on WeChat?" He could not do it, because the person who transmigrated was Gu Mengmeng, not Ma Huatang. This analogy made Gu Mengmeng's face twitch. She despised the act of comparing herself to a stray dog. It must be because Snake, this demon, kept putting his palm up and calling her Tu Meng to train her to shake hands had affected her perception. Gu Mengmeng twitched her lips before replying to Snake with a look of disdain, "Scram." Snakel just quietly watched as the expression on Gu Mengmeng's little face changed a few times after he raised the mating request. The conclusion she came up with was actually, "Get lost." Chapter 557. Gu Mengmeng put on a perfunctory smile and heaved a sigh of relief, saying, "Thank you so much for being so considerate for me." Snake turned his hand slightly and held on to Gu Mengmeng's wrist. His upper body leaned forward and his other hand easily grabbed onto Gu Mengmeng's other wrist. Both his hands were placed on both sides of Gu Mengmeng's body, restraining both of her hands, not giving her a chance to escape. His entire body shrouded Gu Mengmeng with a strong sense of oppression. His pair of dark green eyes carried a depth that Gu Mengmeng could not understand. There was a kind of temptation that spread through the dangerous scent, like an invisible hand, firmly grabbing onto Gu Mengmeng. "Let's work together and give birth to a child with the bloodline of a beast king to open the gate of transmigration. Then, bring me along to your original world, all right?" Gu Mengmeng's body could not move as if her acupoints had been sealed. Even though Snake's pressure made it hard for her to breathe, she could not even move backwards to avoid him. She could only bite the bullet and look into Snake's eyes. She shook her head with difficulty and said, "I promised Elvis and Leah that I will not abandon them. I will not leave them." Snake squinted his eyes and said thoughtfully, "I heard that in your world, there is something called law. A female can only mate with one male, or else she will be captured and locked up." Gu Mengmeng nodded instinctively and responded with a single word, "Yeah." Snake's face slowly inched closer to Gu Mengmeng and he gave an extremely evil smile, saying, "Since you can only have one partner, why not choose the strongest one? I will accompany you to transmigrate back and become your only legal partner. With my abilities, I will be the king no matter which world I am in. That way, no one will ever bully you, isn't that good?" Gu Mengmeng did not avoid Snake's eyes and just looked at him quietly. After a long while, she slowly opened her mouth and said, "You just want to see with your own eyes what the world that your mother could not bear to part with looks like, right?" Snake's lips curled up into a vague smile, but he did not know why. Tilting his head, he said, "If I say yes, will you satisfy me?" Gu Mengmeng shook her head and said, "I will not use my own children as the price to open that door of transmigration." Snakel sneered and returned to his original position. His right hand was still holding onto Gu Mengmeng's wrist, but his gaze was looking into the distance. He said, "She is calmer than you, more rational than you and more heartless than you. No wonder my father fell in love with her that year. She is indeed the most suitable female for the snake race." Snake turned his head and looked at Gu Mengmeng with disdain. He smiled. "Even though you are from the same world, You and her are so different. Gu Mengmeng shrugged her shoulders and said, I'm really sorry for not meeting your family standards for marriage. Snake pinched Gu Mengmeng's little face and said, family means nothing to me. Gu Mengmeng's heart skipped a beat. She still could not learn to think before speaking and would always say something that would hurt others unintentionally. Apologizing would only make the atmosphere more awkward. Gu Mengmeng patted her butt and stood up. She turned back to look at Snake, who was still holding her hand and sitting at the same spot. She said, I'm hungry, accompany me to pluck some fruits. Chapter 558. There was someone sitting outside the cave. Gu Mengmeng glanced at him and felt that he looked familiar, but she could not recall who he was. Snake, on the other hand, completely ignored this person and walked past him without even glancing at him from the corner of his eyes. That person saw Snake and Gu Mengmeng coming out together, so he stood up and followed. Not only did Snake not slow down, he even walked faster and faster, obviously trying to shake off that person behind him. That person was neither angry nor anxious, he just followed until Snake stopped under a huge tree and looked up at the red fruits on the branches. He then stood beside Snake and looked up at the tree together with Snake. He stared at it for a long while in a daze, asking, What are you looking at? Snake ignored him and turned to ask Gu Mengmeng, Do you want to eat this? Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and nodded as she looked at the fruits that were giving off an alluring glow. Snake then turned back to look at the person behind him and said coldly, Go up and pluck the fruits for me. That person was taken aback and frowned, Don't you have hands? Snake supported Gu Mengmeng's but with one hand and protected her waist with the other. He shook Gu Mengmeng and said righteously, I have hands, but I'm busy, so you go. Gu Mengmeng nodded. That person seemed to be caught off guard and was stuffed with a mouthful of dog food. After holding it in for a long while, he only said fiercely, All right. He raised his leg and kicked that fruit tree. If there were no accidents, this fruit tree would let out a sad cry of being broken and then die. But there was an accident. Before his leg could reach the fruit tree, Snake raised his leg and sent him flying. The man clutched his chest and glared at Snake, asking, What now? Snake's face was cold and he said, Tumeng likes trees, don't kick them. The man pointed at Snake and clenched his teeth for a long time before finally squeezing out a sentence, You. Snake was expressionless as he walked to the man and kicked him, saying, Are you dead? If you're not dead, go and pick some fruits. Tumeng is hungry. The man was extremely aggrieved but he had no other choice. He could only walk to the side of the tree and transform into a half-orc. Just as he was about to swim up the tree, Snake stepped on his tail forcefully and the man cried out in pain. He turned around and glared at Snake. What now? Snake's face was still cold as he said, Tumeng hates sh*t, snakes and snakes that look like sh*t. Your original form is all three. Maintain your human form and climb up. Don't show any postures that will disgust Tumeng, or it will affect her appetite. The man was so angry that his face turned green. He pointed at Snake, then at Gu Mengmeng, before pointing at Snake again. I am not doing this anymore. If your female wants to eat the fruit, you can climb up and pluck it yourself. Snake curled his lips and said, It's rare for you to say something pleasant. Seeing that you're so good at talking, I've decided to help you. Huh? The man did not react in time and did not know that his unintentional, your female, had pleased Snake. He only felt a pain in his buttocks and then he flew up, yes, he flew up. Snake used a perfect arc to kick the man onto the tree. Looking at the man who was hanging on the tree branch like a rag doll and shouting at him, Snake revealed a, You're welcome, smile and said, Hurry and pluck the fruit. If you spoil Tumeng, I'll kill you. Snake's eyes lit up. Aside from the topic, on Valentine's Day, Snake and Gu Mengmeng tortured Wabi. This was still just a coincidence. The script had been saved a long time ago and the daily update 9000 just happened to be here. All coincidences were probably fate. Besides, there was no more update today. My babies don't have to wait anymore. It's Valentine's Day. Go out and have a date. Don't be distracted by reading novels. Tomorrow, I'll still be here waiting for you. MMM. Chapter 559. The man on the tree was infuriated. He plucked off a fruit and threw it at Snake. Snake caught it steadily and frowned. I want the biggest one at the top. The man waved his arms and legs in a comical manner. He looked like a character in a manga who was being abused. Gu Mengmeng pitied the innocent man. She held the fruit that was almost as big as her face with both hands. You don't have to go through so much trouble. This is good enough. Snake turned to look at Gu Mengmeng. He asked gently, do you like it? Gu Mengmeng nodded. She answered sweetly, yeah. Snake smiled in satisfaction. Then, he carried Gu Mengmeng and turned to leave. Before he left, he glared coldly at the man on the tree. If any of my fruit trees are damaged, I will throw you out of the Snake King Valley. Snake walked very quickly. Gu Mengmeng could no longer hear what the man on the tree was shouting. Is it all right to leave him here like that? That man had transformed just now. Although it was only for a short while, Gu Mengmeng could still recognize that he was Wabi, the one who had challenged Snake to a duel the day before and ended up being tortured. He looked like he was seriously injured and looked like he was about to turn into snake soup. And now, he was hanging on a tree. Snake frowned. Worried? Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips. I just saw that you two seem to be on good terms. Aren't you afraid that he will be angry and ignore you after you treat him like this? Snake laughed coldly. He rubbed Gu Mengmeng's head. With you by my side in the future, he is not important anymore. Gu Mengmeng was speechless. She felt like a new pet had replaced the old pet and received the owner's love. Then, when would there be a new pet to replace her, Tu Meng? How long have you known each other? Gu Mengmeng estimated the time she needed to be in charge. Snake stopped in his tracks. He seemed to be seriously recalling. After thinking for a long time, he said, I forgot. Wouldn't that be a matter of 1 or 2 years? Gu Mengmeng face-bombed. After all, he was once important to you. Shouldn't you remember our past relationship? I think that pile of sh*t looks quite fun. At least it can take more hits than me. It is at least a Nokia level. Do you want to consider? Snake's face was cold and his green eyes were filled with anger. He said, you want him? Gu Mengmeng waved her hands and said, no, I hate shit, snakes and snakes that look like shit. You know that. Snake nodded and kept his unhappy expression. If you want to play, then play me. I can take a beating too, so I should be more interesting than him. With that, he hooked Gu Mengmeng's chin lightly and brought her face closer to his. Moreover, don't you think that my face is much prettier than his? Gu Mengmeng nodded her head and flattered him. Beautiful, you are the most beautiful snake in the world. The corners of Snake's lips curled up and his eyes curved. He asked, compared to the wolf on your collarbone, who is prettier? Gu Mengmeng shut her mouth. She did not want to speak. If he told the truth, this fellow's rage would definitely soar, but if he told a lie, he would be unwilling. Chapter 560. Gu Mengmeng felt a chill down her spine and shook off the goosebumps on her body. Don't be so hardcore, we can still be friends. Snake's expression was calm and he did not comment. It was just eating a wolf, hardcore? Didn't he usually eat four-legged animals like this? Was there a difference? Snake's palm was huge and cold. When his fingertips touched Gu Mengmeng's smooth face, there was a strange feeling. It was as if an electric current was spreading from his fingertips to her heart. Every touch was a numbing sensation. Gu Mengmeng's face was as white as snow. It was very strange, but not annoying. Under his palm, her face looked very small. He caressed her face and felt the softness under his fingertips. It was so soft that it could make one's heart flutter. Gu Mengmeng brushed Snake's hand away. It's weird for you to look at me like this. You look like a wretched middle-aged uncle. Oh, no, you look like a wretched 1,000-year-old demon. Snake laughed out loud. He grabbed Gu Mengmeng's hand and placed it on his face. Have you ever seen such a good-looking 1,000-year-old demon? Gu Mengmeng shook her head. It's my first time seeing a 1,000-year-old living creature. There's no comparison. Snake tapped Gu Mengmeng's little head. Treasure it. You probably won't be able to find another 2,000-year-old demon in this world. Snake carried Gu Mengmeng to the waterfall. This was the place where Gu Mengmeng had her stomach pumped when she was poisoned by his violence. Snake placed Gu Mengmeng down and took the red fruit from her hands. He washed it in the water beside the waterfall before passing it to Gu Mengmeng. Eat. Gu Mengmeng did not stand on ceremony. She took the fruit and started munching on it. Snake looked at her eating with a gentle gaze. He always felt that it was strange. Why did the food in her hands always look so delicious? He had eaten the fruit on that tree before. Although he could not remember how long ago it was, he definitely had eaten it before. Because in those long and boring years, he had tried to eat some strange things to poison himself to end his boring life. Unfortunately, there was nothing more poisonous than his own snake venom in this world. If he did not even have any impression of the taste, there should not be anything special about it. But, Snake stepped forward and bit the other half of the fruit that Gu Mengmeng was eating. Looking at her eyes that widened in shock, Snake smiled and bit off half of the fruit with a loud crunch. Then, he chewed on it carefully. Juicy and sweet. It was a little crispy, not as tasty as the animal bone. However, it was quite delicious. Why hadn't he noticed this before? Gu Mengmeng put down the fruit she was holding in a daze. She looked at the fruit that he had bitten off and complained, there were so many on that tree. If you wanted to eat, why didn't you ask that lump of sh*t to help you pluck one more? Snake laughed out of boredom and replied as a matter of fact, the one in your hand looks more delicious. The one in your mouth looks more delicious, but it's a pity that there's poison on my teeth. If you touch it, it might kill you. So I have no choice but to take a step back and eat the one in your hand. Gu Mengmeng twirled the fruit. The area where Snake had bitten had indeed turned black. Her face falling, Gu Mengmeng asked, "Can I still eat this fruit?" Chapter 561. Gu Mengmeng sighed. She had no other choice but to break the fruit in her hand into a few pieces and feed them to Snake one piece at a time. Snake ate with gusto and looked like he was in a good mood. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and asked tentatively, "Snake, mmm?" It was the first time Gu Mengmeng called his name on her own accord, and it was also the first time he felt that his name sounded so nice. Gu Mengmeng fiddled with her fingers and asked softly, "You promised to help me save my sons, but why haven't I seen them?" Snake's face turned cold and he looked sideways at Gu Mengmeng and asked, "Are you thinking of your wild men?" Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, "How many times do I have to say it? He is my son, my biological son, not a wild man." Snake was displeased and frowned, saying, "I have said before, other than me, all the males around you are wild men. If you retort again, I will eat them up." Gu Mengmeng was helpless and forced herself to hold back her explanation. She watched as Snake stubbornly labeled her sons as wild men, and said helplessly, "Then where are they? How are they now?" Snake's face was cold, but he could not stand the worry in Gu Mengmeng's eyes. He slowly said, "With me around, she will not dare to act rashly." "Don't worry." Gu Mengmeng asked, "Who?" Snake said, "Don't you know who kidnapped your sons?" Gu Mengmeng was silent for a moment. "Cole. Ellie?" Snake thought for a moment and said, "Oh, so her name is Ellie." Gu Mengmeng said, "You don't even know her name and you dare to guarantee that she will listen to you and not hurt my sons?" Snake smiled lightly and with the confidence and calmness of a person in a superior position, he said, "She is a snake beast and I am the Snake King. In this world, there is no snake that has the guts to disobey my orders. Obedience is their innate nature." Gu Mengmeng took 2 steps forward timidly and pulled Snake's arm, saying, "Then, ask her to return my sons to me." Snake snorted and said, "Do you really think your wild men will be safer by my side than by Ellie's?" Gu Mengmeng was stunned as she recalled the scene of Snake torturing Elvis. Elvis was a 5th-level orc after all, but he could not withstand a single blow from Snake. If that tail had landed on Hada and the rest, Gu Mengmeng did not doubt that the 4 buns would have been exposed on the spot. Snake rubbed Gu Mengmeng's head and said, "Not mentioning them in front of me is the best way for you to protect them. The next time I see you worrying about them, I'll eat them to get rid of any future troubles." Gu Mengmeng shook her head and waved her hands. No, I'm not worried at all." Snake raised his eyebrow and said, "Mengmeng too." Ha, ha ha. Gu Mengmeng grinned, her face full of helplessness. Snake turned his head and said plainly, "So ugly." Gu Mengmeng sighed helplessly and thought to herself, "Ugly, hurry up and return my son and husband to me. I promise to immediately leave the Snake King Valley in a mellow manner and never pollute your eyes again." Unfortunately, Gu Coward only dared to think about it in her heart. She did not have the guts to say it out loud. Snake stood there quietly for a long time, until Gu Mengmeng almost suspected that the person standing in front of her was a statue. Rubbing her eyes, Gu Mengmeng turned her head to stretch her neck. Chapter 562. Huh. Gu Mengmeng's mind went blank for a moment and she did not manage to catch Snake's words. Snake was impatient as he frowned and said coldly, "Why aren't you looking at me anymore?" Gu Mengmeng blinked her eyes and said, My neck is sore, so I changed my posture to move around." Snake said, "When you move your neck, your eyes should be looking at me." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback as she imagined herself focusing her gaze on a point and then turning her neck. Why did she look like a possessed turtle prime minister? Seeing Gu Mengmeng burst out laughing, Snake's slight awkwardness also dissipated. He turned to face Gu Mengmeng and asked, "What are you laughing at?" Gu Mengmeng waved her hands and said, "Look." As she said that, she did what she imagined and then laughed out loud. Snake looked at the mischievous Gu Mengmeng with a layer of warmth and gentleness in his dark green and cold eyes. He said, "So ugly." Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, Right? It's too ugly, ha ha ha." Snake carried Gu Mengmeng back into his arms and said, "Even if it's ugly, you still have to look at me." Huh? Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. What kind of twisted obsession was this? Gu Mengmeng deliberately turned her head and said, "I have to look at the road when I walk and the bowl when I eat. How can I always look at you?" Snake raised his head and said, "I will carry you when we walk and feed you when we eat. Your eyes just have to look at me." Gu Mengmeng asked, "Why?" Snake said, "Just now, you were the one who stared at me first." Gu Mengmeng thought for a moment and said, "Yeah, of course I have to look at you when I talk to you." Snake said, "Then why did you stop looking at me halfway?" Gu Mengmeng. "What do you mean by halfway?" "My neck is getting sore from looking at you acting like a statue all the time," Snake said in a commanding tone. "Look at me, I will allow it. But you are not allowed to stop looking halfway." He had thought that she was so entranced because the back of his head was particularly attractive, so he maintained his posture and did not dare to move for her to see. But this girl actually stopped looking halfway. Aggrieved, too aggrieved. The Snake King could not take this lying down. Gu Mengmeng shook her head helplessly. Sometimes, it was really difficult to communicate with people who were too different in age, especially those who were thousands of years apart. That was simply a gulf, do you understand? Snake, stop right there and speak clearly. That pile of sh*t. Wabi finally came down from the tree and chased after them. She took 2 quick steps and stood in front of Snake, pointing at him. "What did you say just now if she falls asleep? What are you going to do to me?" Snake was displeased and didn't like people disturbing his time with Gu Mengmeng. He ignored Wabi and just carried Gu Mengmeng away. Snake, long, snake, Mengmeng, snake. Come, let us have a good fight today and see who will be the one to throw who out of the Snake King Valley. Goo meng meng, goo goo snake goo, snake. Saying. Snake goo 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 meng meng. Goo meng meng could not understand the situation and answered instinctively, I can't feel the beast pressure either. Snake seemed to be relieved. He pressed the back of Goo meng meng's head with his hand and placed her little face on his shoulder. He whispered into her ear, if you feel uncomfortable, you have to tell me. Goo meng meng nodded. Chapter 563. Goo meng meng could not help but moan softly. Then, the world became very quiet. Even the wind did not dare to blow the leaves. What's wrong? Snake lifted Goo meng meng's chin gently and scrutinized her slightly pale face. He frowned and felt a tightness in his chest. Looking at that pile of **T, he felt more and more irritated. He snapped, didn't you say you could not feel the beast pressure? Goo meng meng shook her head helplessly. Are you releasing your beast pressure? I thought you were going to destroy the earth. Snake was amused by Goo meng meng's words. He glanced at Wabi, who was paralyzed on the ground. He ignored him and walked away. Goo meng meng was a little worried. Snake stopped and looked at Goo meng meng seriously. Do you want to eat snakes? Goo meng meng shook her head. No, Snake felt a little regretful. He turned back to look at Wabi. The peak of 5th level. It should be very nourishing. Goo meng meng smiled embarrassedly. I am weak and have little luck. I can't handle such nourishment. Snake did not comment. He nodded and carried Goo meng meng back into the cave. The next few days could be considered to be peaceful. Wabi seemed to have been shaken quite badly that time. Hence, he did not appear at Snake's cave for a few days. The food that Leah made would be delivered to Snake's cave by the little snakes. Every day, there would be different kinds of food. Everything was very exquisite. Goo meng meng knew that Leah was using this method to tell her that he and Elvis were fine and there was no need to worry. But as for the little wolves, she wondered how they were doing now. Snake said that Ellie did not dare to go against the Snake King's words. This was the innate nature of their race. She did not know whether it was true or not. But she did not dare to pester him any further. She could only convince herself that Snake would not lie to her. About half a month passed. Goo meng meng thought that Snake would let her and Elvis leave with the little wolves once he was sick of it. But this fellow became more and more clingy. When she slept, he would sit beside her and watch. When she ate, he would sit beside her and watch. Even when she was defecating, he sat nearby and watched. Sometimes, when Goo meng meng was really bored, she would throw small stones at each other for fun. She would throw one out and use the other to hit the stone that was thrown out first. Regardless of whether she could hit it or not, she would chase after it to pick it up and throw it again. Snake was also watching this boring game from the side, and he was enjoying it very much. The one who broke Snake's way of life of viewing Goo meng meng as a VR projection was the revived Wabi. This time, he did not challenge Snake. Hey, little female. Are you the new sacred maiden of the Snake King Valley? Goo meng meng pointed at her own nose and looked at Wabi. Saintess? Me? Wabi nodded and said, I heard that you replaced Ellie and became the most respected female in the Snake King Valley. Goo meng meng turned to look at Snake awkwardly and said, Really? Why haven't I heard of this before? Snake went forward and hugged Goo meng meng in his arms. His gaze was sinister and unpredictable. He said, My female is naturally the most respected. Not just the Snake King Valley, there is no other female more respected than you in the entire beast world. Goo meng meng sighed and said, Great King, can you stop fooling around? At your age, not to mention being my grandfather, you can even be my ancestor. I don't dare to claim connections with you. Chapter 564. Goo meng meng shrank her neck and did not have the guts to say, you are so smart. She laughed awkwardly and said, I am not from the snake tribe. It is not good to make me a saintess, right? Snake raised his brows and said, why is my female not from the snake tribe? Gu Mengmeng's face fell and she said, Great King, you should know your limits when joking. I am a married woman, you will be punished by the heavens for teasing me like this. Snakel chuckled and said, what kind of divine punishment? Will it be lightning from the sky or fire from the god of fire? Or else, cut open my chest and take out my gallbladder? Gu Mengmeng twitched her lips and let out a disdainful, eh. She thought to herself, I have been waiting for you to release me from the Snake King Valley as an old palace made when you pardoned the world. If I become a saintess, would I still be able to leave? I am not a fool if I don't do it. Wabi-Ai walked forward and placed his arm over Gu Mengmeng's shoulder. He smiled and said, I am younger than him by a full 200 years. Although I am not as powerful as him now, I can't guarantee that I will improve by leaps and bounds after a few rounds of dual cultivation with you. When that time comes, I will replace him as the Snake King and ensure that your position as a saintess will last for generations to come. How about that? Gu Mengmeng was disgusted and she stared at that pile of sh*t with a look of disdain. Snake's face darkened to the extreme and he really wanted to just release his beast pressure and squash Wabi-Ai to death. But thinking of her pale and uncomfortable face the previous time, Snake forced himself to bear with it. He only reached out one hand and grabbed Wabi-Ai's wrist, twisting his hand behind his back in an anti-ergonomic way. He said in a cold voice, I told you before, Tu Meng hates snakes, hates sh*t, hates snakes that look like sh*t. You still dare to use your dirty hand to touch her, what if you hurt her? Although Wabi-Ai was a snake, the distribution of his bones in human form was not much different from humans. So Snake's hair was still very painful for him. But with his ability to withstand blows from battling with Snake for the past 800 years, this level of pain was probably just a joke. So he did not care much and continued grumbling, sigh, don't the Snake King Valley Saintess always choose powerful males to help them break through the third level boundary? Why can't I touch Tu Meng? The veins on Snake's forehead popped out and his temples throbbed. His pupils darkened at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as if his green pupils were filled with poison. Just one look from him was enough to kill you. Tu Meng is my special title. Are you even worthy of calling me that? As Snake spoke, he threw away Wabi-Ai's arm and turned to clamp down on his jaw, forcing his mouth open and reaching for his tongue. Wabi-Ai was a snake and had the nature of a snake. After fighting with Snake for 800 years, Wabi-Ai was probably even clearer than Snake himself about when Snake was just entertaining himself and when he was really killing in rage. He knew that Snake was really angry now. If he did not use his trump card, he might really die in Snake's hands. So he suddenly transformed into a giant python and used the change in his body size to break free from Snake's restraint. Then, with lightning speed, he attacked Snake first to gain the upper hand. Snake laughed coldly. Gu Mengmeng could even faintly see his hair fluttering in the wind. It was the kind of entrance scene of a martial arts leader. Chapter 565. Gu Mengmeng stealthily took a step back, then another, then, Snake found out. With a flick of his snake tail, Snake threw Wabi-Ai far away. As he sprinted towards Gu Mengmeng, he transformed into his human form. By the time he reached Gu Mengmeng, he was already that perfect and flawless snake. His dark green eyes glowed with a faint light, clearly still angry. He wrapped his arms around Gu Mengmeng's waist and didn't grab her wrist, because he knew that he might not be able to control his strength precisely after the battle. Her wrist was so thin, if he exerted even a little force, it would break. Although she would look good breaking her wrist, the process might be a little painful. He didn't like it when she was in pain, hurt, frowning and despondent, and even more so when she was deep in thought, she wasn't thinking about him. Where to? Especially when he didn't like the way she always gave off the feeling that she wanted to leave his side. Was she the same as that woman? She desperately wanted to return to that world, while Gu Mengmeng desperately wanted to return to her partners and children. why couldn't they return to him? The dangerous aura emanating from Snake was too strong. Looking at the almost crippled Wabi-Eye behind him, who would dare to defy him at this moment? Gu Mengmeng gave a timid smile and said, I saw that the two of you were having a good time sparring, so I made some space for you. Oh. Snake laughed coldly and asked, where do you intend to make space for yourself? Gu Mengmeng kept quiet. She didn't have the courage to say, of course the further the better. Snake's head tilted 45 degrees downwards, his gaze unfathomable as he looked at Wabi-Eye, who was struggling to move. Don't worry, with me around, no one can hurt you, and no one can touch you. Yes, 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 yes. Gu Mengmeng smiled apologetically. Seeing Wabi-Eye on the verge of death yet still fuming, she broke out in cold sweat. Once a person was nervous, their stomach would hurt. That twisting pain instantly made Gu Mengmeng unable to straighten her back. F***K, she was becoming more and more terrified. She was just watching others fight and she was already so scared at the start. Gu Mengmeng cursed herself in her heart while shaking her head helplessly. But, hiss, why did this feel so familiar? Gu Mengmeng lowered her head, instantly dumbfounded. His face first turned pale, then red, matching the color of the blood flowing down from between his legs. Aunt, you really are my dear aunt. No matter where I am, your concern is always so. It's impossible to ignore. Snake felt something in his body stirring restlessly, and the closer he got to Gu Mengmeng, the more obvious it became. When the blood between her legs trickled down, the crimson color instantly stung his eyes. Damn it. Did he accidentally injure her when he was fighting with Wabi-Eye? He was already guarding against Wabi-Eye from getting close to her. Was she the one who injured him? I was too focused and accidentally bumped into it. Snake's face was ghastly pale and he wanted to lift Gu Mengmeng's dress. Gu Mengmeng was shocked. She covered her dress with both hands and said, what are you doing? Check the wound, Snake replied with a frown. Gu Mengmeng blushed and stuttered. She tried her best to protect her dress and said, that. I'm fine, I'm really fine. Don't lift my dress. You will be punished for teasing a married woman. Snake gritted his teeth and said coldly, I am not afraid. Chapter 566. Ha. Snakel sneered and ignored Gu Mengmeng's resistance. He directly carried her up and walked like the wind. He did not look at Gu Mengmeng again and only said coldly, you look for Elvis when you're sad and Leah when you're injured, then when will you think of looking for me? Gu Mengmeng was completely dumbfounded. She had been breastfeeding after giving birth so her period had not come. Later on, the children were given complimentary foods but they were not really weaned. She would always squeeze out some milk for the children to drink once a day to supplement their nutrition. The real weaning of the wolf pups was when she participated in that beauty pageant. Maybe it was because she was too busy and messed up her biological clock so great aunt did not come. She had almost forgotten about this matter. Who knew that it would make such a grand and dazzling appearance today? But, it was just great aunt. Why was Snake so angry as if he had been cuckolded? Before Gu Mengmeng could understand what was going on, Snake had already brought her back to the cave. There was a beast skin laid on the ground and he placed her on it. His pupils were in a vertical state with only a slit. She could not tell how angry he was. Gu Mengmeng also could not figure out why Snake was so angry. Was it because she wanted to see Leah because of her period or because Wabi-Eye's challenge today had angered him? This Wabi-Eye was in a state where he would challenge anyone he could move for the past 800 years. Gu Mengmeng felt that it was unlikely that he could come up with any new tricks to anger Snake. Was it because she wanted to see Leah? Was there a need to be so angry? That. Gu Mengmeng carefully broke the silence. Snake turned around with a sharp gaze. Seeing Gu Mengmeng shrinking her neck in fright, he turned his head away again. He felt aggrieved and his chest was burning, but his tone was much gentler. Later on, when you don't bleed so much, I'll feed you some of my blood to replenish your energy. Gu Mengmeng smiled stiffly. Great King, have you forgotten? Your blood is highly toxic and does not have the same effect as the black chicken white phoenix pill. Snake glanced sideways. His pupils were thicker than before. Maybe he was not so angry anymore. You have the antibodies in your body and I will detoxify you. It's only nourishing, it's not fatal. Snake said, do you know how many people dream of obtaining the blood of the Beast King? Gu Mengmeng looked at Snake's "You wicked slave, hurry up and thank me" expression and was at a loss for words. She hesitated for a moment before continuing, I'm just having my period. I don't think there's a need to supplement me like this, right? Great Aunt? Snake frowned and his face froze for a moment. Then, he suddenly recalled the relevant scenes of his mother beast in heat from the depths of his memory. Awkward, Gu Mengmeng could almost see crows flying over Snake's head. Snake cleared his throat and said, female estrus is an important matter. Also needs to be replenished. With that, he stood up abruptly and paced around on the spot. Then, he walked back and looked at Gu Mengmeng condescendingly. He said sternly, looking for Leah the moment you're in heat, are you in a hurry to mate? Gu Mengmeng held her forehead and said, Leah knows how to make sanitary pads. I want sanitary pads. Snake was stunned again and did not say anything. He just turned around and walked out. You can't blame him, you really can't blame him. Chapter 567. Snake raised his head and shot a look at the colorful snakes guarding the entrance. Immediately, a few little snakes slithered out. Not long after, Leah was brought over with a huge pot in his hands. Even from afar, Gu Mengmeng could smell a gingery scent. Li's state did not seem like he was being imprisoned by someone at all. Instead, he looked like someone who cooked a pot of soup at the entrance of the cave and then brought it in. Snake knew that Gu Mengmeng was afraid of the cold, different from him. So even if the fire would dry out the cave and make him uncomfortable, he still kept the fire burning for 24 hours. So after Leah came in, he placed the pot on the fire pile with ease. Then, he said as he fiddled with it, here, this is the only dish that Elvis can bring out. You haven't had it since your confinement, right? Gu Mengmeng's heart warmed. Even if it was just boiling ginger slices in water, Elvis's strict requirements for the thickness of the ginger slices were always the same. In order to cook the taste that she had praised, he was almost to the point of nitpicking. Her heart was always warm. There's ginger here? Gu Mengmeng took over the small bowl that Leah handed to her. She took a sip and sighed, ah, I'm alive again. Leah smiled gently and rubbed Gu Mengmeng's little head gently. Then, he turned to look at Snake and asked, can I hunt here? Snake frowned and said, didn't I provide all the food for you? If you're not full, then go hungry. Settle Tuming's matter first. She wants her sanitary pad. Hurry and hand it over, don't force me to do it. Leah held back his laughter and glanced sideways at Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng looked back at Leah with an expression of, I know how speechless you are. Leah replied with an expression of, you still understand me. The two of them did not say a word and just looked at each other with a faint smile. But they could read the meaning in each other's eyes. Snake felt frustrated for no reason. This was the reason why he did not allow Gu Mengmeng to see Elvis and Leah. There seemed to be a strange atmosphere between them, isolating him from them. Snake's face turned cold and he said, I don't want to kill you on Tuming's account. But my patience is limited. Hurry up and hand over the sanitary pad and get lost. Leah sighed, as if he was not afraid of Snake in the slightest. He clicked his tongue and said, every time you send the prey here, they are all minced into pieces. Those beast skins can't even be used anymore. I need fresh, clean, and soft animal skin to make a sanitary pad for Meng Meng. So please allow me to hunt here. Snake waved his hand impatiently and said, up to you. Get lost, I already want to kill someone. Leah shrugged his shoulders helplessly and said, if you want Meng Meng to accept you, you have to get used to getting along with me and Elvis. Meng Meng cares a lot about her family. If you always show that you will hurt her family, she will not like you. The veins on Snake's forehead throbbed as he stared at Leah with narrowed eyes. Snake did not release his aura, but Leah, who was under the hierarchy, could not help but feel a chill down his spine. Then, Leah turned around and ran, directly burrowing into Gu Mengmeng's arms. In his half-orc form, he curled up behind Gu Mengmeng, wrapping his furry big tail around Gu Mengmeng's waist. He peeked out half his head from Gu Mengmeng's shoulder and complained pitifully, sob sob sob, Mengmeng, I'm so scared. Aside from the topic, author, Leah, you are after all the great witch doctor of Saint Nazir, the ninth highness of Sauter, can you have some face? Where's your pride? Where's your pride? Leah sneered, want face in front of Mengmeng? Want pride? Want pride? Are you stupid or am I stupid? Chapter 568. Snake paused, feeling as if he was being framed. Gu Mengmeng couldn't help but laugh at Snake's infuriated look. She shook her head and sighed, Leah has always been timid, don't scare him. As Gu Mengmeng said, she pulled Leah into her arms from behind and patted his back lightly, you drama queen, stop acting. Snake won't really do anything to you. Leah felt extremely comfortable being coaxed by Gu Mengmeng. He squinted his eyes at Snake, his sly smile carrying a hint of provocation and complacency. Seeing how Snake's green eyes were about to spit fire, his mood was exceptionally good. Raising his head, he kissed Gu Mengmeng's little chin, then stood up and gently hugged Gu Mengmeng in his arms, saying, all right, I'll listen to you. I won't fool around anymore. Lee's hugs were always gentle and warm. Gu Mengmeng hugged Leah back, then asked, is your body okay? Can you hunt? Gu Mengmeng knew that although Snake had no intention of taking Elvis and Lee's lives, he still used snake venom on them to weaken their bodies just in case, so that they could not escape with Gu Mengmeng. Leah raised his brows, gently hooked Gu Mengmeng's chin, and said with slight anger, in your heart, am I so weak that I can't even deal with a mere wild beast? Gu Mengmeng smiled in a fawning manner, saying, no, I'm just worried about you. Leah pinched Gu Mengmeng's little nose and shook it lightly, saying, don't worry blindly, lie down and wait for me to come back, don't move. If I come back later and see this place like a slaughterhouse, I won't let you off, understand? Gu Mengmeng nodded, saying, yes. Leah hugged Gu Mengmeng for a while more before standing up to walk out. When he passed by Snake, he gave him a bright smile and said plainly, in the future, you must get along well with Elvis and me, okay? Or else, you will be the one at a disadvantage, because Mengmeng's heart is biased towards us. All the best. Snake just clenched his fists, his body stiff as he stared at Leah, swishing his big tail as he walked out of the cave step by step. Gu Mengmeng chuckled, stop staring, he's just like that. I mean no harm. Snake turned around and looked at Gu Mengmeng. He threatened you. Gu Mengmeng blinked her eyes and looked at Snake as if she had lost her memory. Snake stepped forward and said, he said he won't let you off. Why aren't you angry? Gu Mengmeng smiled sweetly. Why should I be angry? Snake's face was cold as he said, every time I threaten you to eat them up, you always argue with me. Gu Mengmeng said, how can that be the same? What Leah meant by not letting me off was probably that he would not allow me to move around before my period ended. I would have to lie on the bed for 7 whole days. Life was hopeless. What difference was there between me and a salted fish? But I know that his punishments are carried out on the basis of loving me and protecting me. He and Elvis would never do anything to make me sad. Snake frowned and asked, if I really eat them, will you be sad? Gu Mengmeng kept her smile and said seriously, my family is my life. I will fight to the death with anyone who dares to touch my family. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.